we'll just wait a couple more minutes before we
Okay.
come in, and then we'll start.
Okay, excellent. So you're going to record it and you're going to send it to Iman?
Yeah, oh, I can do that totally.
Excellent. Yay.
Assalamu alaikum, Amina. Assalamu alaikum. Hello. Welcome to tonight. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the chat box. We'll be checking the chat box continuously and taking in any questions. We have a nutritionist with us here and a doctor. So any questions related to hydration, what you should eat for energy, or if you're taking any medication, or any of your parents are taking any medication, you're not sure how they should balance, you can always ask the doctor.
Salam. Thank you so much for having me.
Alhamdulillah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, definitely.
Really appreciate it. Let's wait a couple of minutes before we jump into, and then, we're going to record this. Anybody needs the recording? Yeah, I think it should be fine, right?
Definitely. Iman said she'll post it to the website, so that'll be pretty cool.
Perfect. So
thanks for moderating, Manaz.
Of course, no problem. Let's wait one more minute and we'll start at 6:50.
All right, cool.
So Dr. Arif, can you say hello? Because I just want to see, are we getting the speaker view?
Yes. Hi, I'm
okay.
Dr. Arif. Yeah.
Thank you. It's working. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I was going to change his name tag to say Dr. Arif, because right now it says Manaz Khan Studio. But he don't know who he is once he introduces himself, so that's fine.
That's fine.
All right, it's 6:50. You're muted, Manaz. You're muted.
Okay.
Okay.
See, I was muted and I was saying the same thing, like anybody who's not speaking, let's just mute the microphone so we have clear voice. So welcome everyone to today's session. And this is the pre-Ramadan preparation. We are talking about the nutrition you should be taking for while you're fasting in the morning and after you break your fast, because sometimes people, they eat too much and then they don't feel well and they don't feel like eating in the sahur next day. So what is the right way to nourish your body, how to keep yourself hydrated? So we have a nutritionist here today, a registered dietitian nutritionist, YaQutullah Muhammad, and she will be answering your questions. And then we have an internist physician, internal medicine physician, Dr. Shoaib Arif with us. So if you have any questions related to how you should be taking your medicines, he's going to answer all of those questions. So I'm going to begin with YaQutullah and I'll have her introduce us all. Thank you for doing this, YaQutullah. I really appreciate that because I know we're always dehydrated and the days are so long here in the US, so it can be really hard. So I'll have you take over.
All right, awesome. Thanks for having us. On behalf of Seekers Institute, I guess the resident registered dietitian, welcome everyone. Tonight we're going to be discussing topics, questions, sharing resources around nourishing to flourish for the month of Ramadan, right? As we all know, inshallah, I think Ramadan will start on what, the 12th or 13th, so we got like next week, inshallah. So we're going to be talking a little bit and sharing resources. I am a registered dietitian out of Atlanta, Georgia. I've been practicing for about 15 years now, both clinical setting and now outpatient, as well as private practice. And I have a passion for really working with the Muslim community and women in general, and people who are active. I'm a runner, so I really like working with the athletic community in Atlanta as well. So yeah, looking forward to sharing with you all.
Awesome. That's going to be amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll have Dr. Shoaib Arif introduce himself now. Dr. Arif, off to you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Shoaib Arif. I'm an internist, internal medicine physician by training. I practice as a hospitalist in New York. And I'd like to thank Seekers Institute for having me on this panel. It feels good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your time. So I know, Sister YaQutullah, you have a presentation for us. I think we'll start with that.
That's fine. That's great, because then we can kind of generate some questions that, if you don't already have some. I know we have about 6 questions that came through, but we can kind of answer those however you guys want to answer those. So once you give me host capability, I think I'll be able to share my screen.
Oops, okay. Let's see, where is that?
If you go to the top next to Seekers Institute, it says more. And then you click on, you should be able to click on
Meeting setup.
Let's see.
That's what it does, right?
It should be more, and then you can make me host.
So it's not showing me host. It's
Does it allow you to make anyone else host? I think you're muted. I can't hear you, Manaz. Okay, you are now host.
Okay,
excellent. Yeah. I'm host. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. It's a very simple presentation just to kind of get the conversation started. And I'll go ahead and share this one. Yes. All right, can everyone see the presentation? Okay, excellent. So let's get started. So as I said, registered dietitian in Atlanta, Georgia. And today we're going to be talking about kind of the basics of Ramadan. So a new year, race to Ramadan, right? So basically what we'll be discussing today is ways to keep it sweet and simple. Components of meal prep. Everybody always wonders, hey, what am I supposed to eat, right? It doesn't really change a lot from, say, what you're currently eating, but it is an opportunity to incorporate healthier options, healthier choices, and look at really simplifying for the month of Ramadan. We have longer days, we may be preparing for ourselves or our families, and we really just want to keep it simple. We're also going to be talking about ways to add fruits and vegetables to meals, and I have an additional resource link to share with you on that, and preventing food waste, which is, of course, something that we should all consider during the month of Ramadan. Okay, so this ayah is from Surah An-Nahl, ayah 114. So eat of the sustenance which Allah has provided to you, lawful and good, and be grateful for the favors of Allah if it is He whom ye serve. So, of course, a reminder also benefits the believer. Okay, so Ramadan basics, outside of what to eat, right? We also want to make sure that we're focusing on what our intentions are for the month of Ramadan, right? What our intentions are, not just for eating, but also for our worship, okay? How we spend our days, and how we plan for the month of Ramadan. The importance of complex carbs, nutrient dense meals, we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll share additional tips and resources for meal planning for Sahur and Iftar, as well as hydration tips, right? So when we talk about keeping it simple, Bismillah, we start with our intentions, and then we look at ways to keep our meal planning simple. Whether you make a list, you include really simple nutrient dense ingredients, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, making sure you're incorporating your hydration during non-fasting hours. One of my favorite things to do is to make sure that we do first in, first out, and we take inventory of what we already have in our freezer or our fridge, right? Before we go out and shop for the month, let's see what we currently have, and then maybe shop for a week at a time. And that way we can help to prevent food waste, and kind of get the best out of the food that we have available to us. Okay. Selecting your recipes, whether it be one of your favorites, whether it be from a recipe guidebook, online, something your friend shared with you. But you want to make sure that you're incorporating those key components: fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, heart healthy fats. Okay. And we'll get into a little bit of those. Okay. Prep is really simple. You want to keep it simple. You want to make sure that you utilize the appliances that you have in your kitchen. I know I am a huge crockpot person, right? So if I can do crockpot meals, or I can do baked meals for a few days at a time, it's a great way to save time and money. Okay. But this is up to you depending on what appliances you really kind of like to use. When we talk about nutrient density, again, we're looking at complex carbs, and these are examples of different complex carbs. Of course, we can use lean protein options, whether they be animal-based or plant-based. You want to make sure that you're incorporating those heart-healthy fats, and of course, if you're doing any vitamins or minerals, to continue with those. In the month of Ramadan, year round, really, but really in a month of Ramadan, the focus is on quality, not necessarily quantity. Okay, not necessarily. So you focus on, the healthy foods that are rich in fiber, your protein, especially when it comes to your sahur and your iftar meals, and then including foods that will offer a slow release of nutrients and energy throughout the day. And that's why we emphasize the complex carbs. Another thing we want to look at is incorporating different foods that our beloved Prophet Muhammad SAW consumed. And these are like, your cucumbers, of course, your dates, your watermelon, barley, okay, different types of soups and things like that. So you definitely want to include those. This is actually a snapshot from a resource that I will share later. It's called the Ramadan Reset Book. And this is just kind of focusing on sahur options. I get a lot of questions about, what do you eat for sahur? Now, what you eat for sahur is really going to just depend on what you're able to tolerate, okay, what you like, of course, and what you have available, okay. So the Ramadan Reset Recipe Guidebook is actually a guidebook that has 30 days of sahur, iftar, smoothie recipes, soup recipes, and physical activity options. So it's a great comprehensive website resource, and I'll share the link in the chat. So meal planning for sahur, of course, you want to take sahur, because this is also from the tradition of our beloved Prophet Muhammad SAW. There is barakat, there is blessing in it. And then in addition to sahur, you want to have some type of snack even later in the evening, maybe after Taraweeh prayer, before you go to sleep, but a smaller meal, okay? Consuming plenty of high water content fruits and vegetables. And then you can also incorporate some dried fruit if you'd like to help replenish electrolytes. During the non-fasting hours, it's going to be really important to hydrate. Some people say, well, I don't really want to drink too much because then I'll be up all night using the restroom. Your benefits outweigh your cost on this one, okay? So you definitely want to make sure that you're hydrating during your non-fasting hours, really kind of limiting your coffee, and then looking at different types of teas and soups that you can incorporate, and definitely cutting back and limiting your sodas. This is a sample sahur, right? This is a sample. All right. So the cool thing about this is you can always swap this out, right? Some people say, well, I don't really eat oatmeal. Okay. So you can actually substitute this with another cereal type or another carbohydrate that you like. Looking at your fruits, okay, looking at nuts and seeds as a source of plant-based proteins, of course your water, and then looking at whether or not you do non-dairy options or dairy options, okay. This is just a sample, so these can definitely be swapped out for other options. All right, when we talk about meal planning for iftar, again, we're just looking at, and this is a screenshot from the book that I'll be sharing later, but look at limiting fried foods, concentrated sweets. I know in Ramadan, we like fried foods and sweets, and we're like, I fasted all day, so I really want this, right? More often than not, you want to make sure that your baseline nutrition, your foundational nutrition is solid. And then, okay, if you want to have something else, that's okay. But I think the biggest thing in Ramadan is that we not overdo it. Okay. So we're not saying don't enjoy your cultural foods. We're not saying don't eat the foods you love, right? What we're saying is, of course, in Islam, we practice balance and moderation, right? So if you have some, it's in moderation. Okay. It's a limited amount. Okay. increasing your fruits and vegetables, as I said previously, and then you can start iftar with a warm soup. Maybe it'd be lentil soup or some type of vegetable soup, just to help your body with the digestion process, help your body get ready for solid foods after fasting for long periods of times, okay? And including a complex carb rich in fiber, which is also very important. This is a sample iftar meal. Now it's very interesting because when I was in Morocco for the first 10 days of Ramadan, they have iftar, right? And iftar is such a large meal. I thought that was dinner. I thought that was it, right? But they have iftar where you break fast, and then like 3 hours later, they serve dinner. And dinner is like the tagine with the lamb and the figs, and like it's really heavy. It's a heavy meal, right? And they cook fresh every day. So I was like, oh my God, all of this food, you know? So I said, okay, well, let's put together a really simple iftar, because iftar is what we eat when we break fast. That's it. It's not the dinner, right? The dinner comes later. So when we talk about iftar, we're saying, okay, dates, of course, water, okay, and then you can incorporate some type of soup if you want to, right? This is the basic. If you want to add on, that's fine, but really keep it simple. The second part of this, the lean protein, the bulgur, some type of carbohydrate, your fruits and vegetables, that is a little heavier a little later, okay? So you make maghrib, okay, and then you eat dinner. So I just thought it was really important to distinguish between iftar and actually dinner, because iftar is breaking your fast and having something small to break your fast, for the most part. Hydration tips, right? So when it comes to hydration tips, of course, during your non-fasting hours, and there are ways there are ways to hydrate. Did I admit her? Oh, okay. Okay, so ways to hydrate: broths, your soups, your popsicle, regular water, of course, coconut water. I know here in Atlanta, we have like our halal grocery stores where you can actually get Zamzam water, which is pretty cool. Your fresh fruits and vegetables. You're looking at high water content foods that you can incorporate. I shy away from a lot of sports drinks just because of the added sugar. You just want to be mindful of that. And then if you're looking at coffee, you really don't want to consume that in excess, maybe 1 to 2 cups, okay? But really looking at limiting and avoiding sodas and other concentrated sweetened beverages, and then looking at hydrating between Isha, Taraweeh. I know when we were in the mosque, we had our water bottles. So when we went to go, pray Taraweeh, in between the rakats, we would sip, okay? And then after Taraweeh, we would, continue to drink. So really making sure that you're hydrating during the month of Ramadan is going to be really important. Another thing, really looking at this Ramadan, the importance of making your intentions, increasing our zikr and our prayer, of course, and our charity. For those of us who can't fast or are unable to fast because of physical reasons or chronic disease, really just important that we find ways that we can support those who are fasting and helping to sponsor a meal or break fast. And then looking at how we're going to spend our days as far as engaged in worship, whether it be a podcast, whether it be, streaming online, whether or not your masjid has opened back up for limited socially distanced prayers, and just planning what that looks like on your schedule. Some of us work full time, some of us work outside the home, just being realistic about how you're going to be using your time. Stock up on your water and your dates. Okay. I know it's really, I get excited when I get to go and purchase my case of dates for Ramadan, because it's signaling Ramadan is coming. Okay. Some of us order online, that's fine. And then not overshop for food. Okay. So shop a little bit at a time. Look at your fridge and freezer space and be moderate in consumption. And of course, making room for your fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, and hard, healthy fats. All right. I wanted to actually share, and I'm actually going to put these links in. One is Pulses. If you go to pulsesusa.org, I'm going to put this in the chat. I think there's a way I'll put these in the chat in the end. There are some great plant-based recipes. And then there are also Crockpot or Instapot recipes that we can also take advantage of. They're very simple, they're cost effective. And of course, you know, that you can use your non-perishable dried beans and nuts and seeds and things like that in these recipes. Yeah, so the book, the Ramadan Reset book, is basically, and I mentioned this before, it's the 30-day customized meal plan, fasting meal plan, and it has your smoothies and has ethnic recipes as well as hydration tips and activities. And I'll post that link. And if you guys want to check us out, I do offer free consultations initially as a dietitian, and I also offer telehealth nutrition, like video conferencing like this. Like if we were to like chat or do like a consultation, it would be through telehealth. And basically you can schedule with me on Instagram or Facebook, or call directly. And that is my presentation. Let us know if you all have any questions, and I'll be posting those links for you in the chat box.
Yes, feel free to type your questions in the chat box and we can read them. And it's I'm glad you included this link of the recipes, because it's such a hard, you know, by the end of the month, we're like, what do I make? And we're so tired. And if any South Asians are here, Desi people, we love our fried food for Iftar. So that's really hard for us. So I have a question for the doctor. What are your thoughts on the sports drink? You mentioned, Sister YaQutullah, that sports drink are so high in sugar, but what about the zero calorie or sugar-free ones? So because they include a lot of electrolytes. So I think I'll have Dr. Arif answer that question.
Sure. So in terms of the sugar-free ones, I mean, certainly they're good. And if you want to hydrate yourself, they give you, you know, the water, the electrolytes. You know, they're sugar-free because they contain artificial sweeteners like aspartame, for example. Those artificial sweeteners have been shown to cause some health problems such as strokes if used long-term. So I would say, you know, if you want to use sugar-free sports drinks like Powerade Zero or Gatorade sugar-free, you know, use them in moderation. You can probably make your own sugar electrolyte drink at home. You know, water, a little bit of salt, sugar, and some lemon really actually works just as well. You could probably also buy the unflavored Pedialyte. That's just a straight up a rehydrating drink. You know, it has some glucose in it, but I think as Sister YaQutullah was mentioning, sports drinks have, you know, these dyes and colors. I think, you know, you could buy just a plain unflavored Pedialyte, and that's just good enough. But you can, you know, coconut water is really good actually for
Yeah, that's really
hydration.
good.
It has a lot of potassium and it has magnesium in it, and that's very important for your body. So you can certainly use coconut water rather than, you know, drinking Gatorade or Powerade.
Okay,
Another one
thank
is
you.
I just wanted to add on to that. Another one is actually it's actually a prophetic drink. Our beloved Prophet Muhammad SAW used to drink it, and it's basically called nabiz. And what you do is you soak dates overnight in water, right? So the dates are also going to provide electrolytes. It's important that we get, you know, creative. Hey, I can do popsicle. I can do coconut water popsicles. I can do nabiz popsicles if that's something I want to incorporate, and things like that. So just being not like, oh my God, I got to go out and get these sports drinks to get my electrolytes. Electrolytes are contained in your fruits and vegetables anyway. That's why we say, hey, high water content fruits and vegetables, make sure we're including, if you need to do dried fruits, those are going to be a source of electrolytes as well. But like Dr. Arif said, really keep the sports drinks to a minimum, and then, you know, artificial whatever to a minimum because it's artificial. So you don't want to, like, you know, consume that in excess anyway. So really kind of just research, you know, some of the foods of the Prophet Muhammad SAW, and I have shared quite a few of those on my Instagram page. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. And the fruits and vegetables that are highlighted in the Quran, and, you know, as we study this, you know, in the month of Ramadan too, we can kind of say, oh, well, hey, you know, I can include that. Hey, I can include that, and get my electrolytes that way.
Awesome. So you have a list of these foods that are sunnah on your Instagram page? Okay, that's an awesome place to find that. There is a question that it's for you, Dr. Arif. I'm going to read it out. So Halima is asking, if you take medications that it's important to stay hydrated, how should you take the medicine? Blood pressure medicine twice a day, diabetic medicine once a day, with all the pollen, antihistamines, dry you out.
So, there's a couple of different dimensions to this question. You know that certain chronic diseases where you are exempt from fasting. Allah is very merciful, and disease like diabetes, congestive heart failure are where you are exempt from fasting and you don't have to fast. But if you still, if you do want to fast, then the most important thing is, of course, you got to take your medications regularly, and you obviously have to take them if depending on the frequency is. Uh, let's take blood pressure medications, for example. There's several different ones. Some of them cause you to lose some salt and water from your body and thereby lower the blood pressure. Others work by different ways. There's some which you take once a day. There's some which you take twice a day. So obviously, the ones which you take more often during the day, it's going to be a little difficult taking them because you can only take them if you're fasting, in sahur and in or after iftar. And as you know, Ramadan, every year comes at slightly different time periods, so that the suhoor and the iftar are slightly different times. So if you were taking your blood pressure medicine at say 5 in the morning and 6 in the evening, you can't exactly do that because you're probably fasting at the time that's 6 in the evening during Ramadan. So that time interval does narrow down a little bit, and if you're on those blood pressure medications which cause you to lose salt and water and you're fasting, you're obviously going to get a lot more dehydrated. So it depends on what medications you're taking. It depends on how often you're taking. uh, what I would say is that you should work with your primary care physician to make sure that it's safe for you to fast, and B, if the interval between the two dosages, assuming that you're on a blood pressure medication which you take twice a day, is adequate enough that when you take that medication in the evening and then again take it at sahur, in early morning, that time window isn't too short where the medication, you're actually kind of taking a double dose. In terms of diabetes, there's a number of different drugs. There's insulin. It also depends on what you're taking. If you're taking insulin, and again, you're exempt from fasting, but if you really want to fast, you're taking insulin, you probably should work with your primary care physician to see when you might want to lower the dose of your insulin. There are several different insulin formulas out there. There's short acting, there's long acting. And so depending on which ones you take, what your prescription is, you may want to lower one or both kinds. If you take oral medication for diabetes, you may want to decrease the dose because you're going to be obviously not eating when you fast. And if you've taken your diabetes medication while you're fasting, you're going to develop hypoglycemia, you're going to develop low blood glucose, and that may have adverse consequences. So, I would say work closely with your primary care physician. If you don't already, keep a log of your blood pressures or blood sugars, as the case may be. That's probably going to help your primary care physician decide more effectively what to do with your medication dosages, how to spread them out or decrease them.
Okay, thank you so much for such a detailed response, because so many people have this question, and I know so many people have diabetes or blood pressure, and we already received this question a few times in advance. So thank you so much for that. Sister YaQutullah, the food, what was the question here? High dense food to eat during the suhoor to stay full throughout the day. Can you just answer this verbally also, because people listening the recording would love to know that.
Okay. So the month of Ramadan, it's okay. Like, we want to make sure that we nourished or flourish. We want to make sure that we have those nutrient dense foods, right? There are going to be periods where you consume foods, okay, and your blood glucose level rises, and then it kind of plateaus out, right, and then it falls, okay. So it's okay to feel a little hunger during fasting. We don't want to be so stuffed that we just don't feel hungry during fasting, right? But what we want to make sure that we do is that we also continue to nourish ourselves. So what I wanted to do is I just want to do a quick screen share for you guys, okay, just to kind of show you what this looks like. And I put this link, can you guys see this? I put this link in the chat, okay, but I opened it up so that we can go through it, we can see it, okay, and really look at it. So this is from our comprehensive planning guide for Ramadan, right? But it basically says, what should I eat for suhoor? Because this is a very common question that we get, right? So we're looking at least 3 of the 4 food groups in your suhoor, right? So what we're looking at, we're not really focusing on the calories as much as we're looking at the quality of the food. So when I talk about that, I'm talking about the quality of the foods, right? The complex carbs. So there was a question on complex carbs. So if we're talking complex carbs, this kind of outlines, hey, these are some options that we can eat. Really keeping it limited as far or low in processed foods, right? But then we want to make sure that we're getting good examples like your oatmeal. Overnight oats is a very popular one that can be prepared ahead of time. Things like what do you call them? Really any kind of oats. And then of course, within different ethnic communities, we're going to have our different grains anyway, right? So everybody may not do overnight oats. So we want to also recognize that, right? Quinoa, whole grain breads and cereals, things like that are minimally processed, but they also contain a significant amount of fiber because fiber helps with the satiety or the feeling of, okay, I'm full, okay, I'm satisfied, this is good, right? But it's also a slow released energy kind of throughout the day. So you want to focus on high fiber foods. Okay. And some good examples, your chia, your flax seeds, you can incorporate that into your cereals or your smoothies in the morning. Your whole grains, broccoli, spinach, quinoa, beans, spinach. I mean, there's so many that you can pick and choose from. You have to ask yourself which ones work for me, and which ones do I have the time to prepare? Which ones am I going to prepare ahead versus say the night before? Okay. I even know in some cases people say, well, I eat iftar. It was a lot. So well, what I can do is I can actually, when I get up for sahur, I can polish off the rest of it, right? So and that's quite all right as well. Okay. When we're looking at lean proteins, we're looking at different types of proteins. Now I know and I recognize we may have some people that are vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian. Some of us may not do animal-based proteins, and that's okay. Okay, so the onus is on you as far as finding what your alternative protein is going to be. And that's okay. Just say, hey, I don't eat meat. That's fine. Mashallah, that's you. But find a protein alternative that's going to allow you to meet your nutrition needs as far as protein is concerned. Okay. Peanut butter, I love peanut butter, almond butter. I did a program with 88 acres where they actually supplied us with alternative seed proteins because a lot of our clients were not tolerating nuts. So we were able to get like watermelon seed butters, sunflower seed butters, just a whole host of different types of butters that may not be as common, but that we have to explore for our clients that do not tolerate nuts very well. Okay. So when we talk about heart healthy fats, we're looking at avocados, we're looking at seeds, we're looking at nuts and things like that. Specifically of note are the high omega-3 fatty acid fish, right? So that's like your mackerel, your salmon, your sardines, tuna, things like that, lake trout. Okay. But again, moderation is key and preparation is key. So if Ramadan starts in a week, we need to understand how this is going to flow. What are we going to be eating? Okay. So again, I did put this link in the chat so you guys can check it out. And then it goes into additionally healthy examples for sahur, iftar, things like that. And I know a lot of people look at this and say, oh my God, this is so much water, right? But what we want to also look at is we want to look at the fact that in consuming the water, we also count 80% of our needs. If we're going to calculate our needs, right? 80% is going to come from fluids, and that's fine. But another 20% would actually come from the foods that we eat. So that's why I really stress high water content fruits and vegetables. Okay, soups, broths, things like that. Okay. So you may do milk, you may not do milk, you may do a smoothie, okay, with a plant-based option. So these are like, your suhoor options. You might boil a couple of eggs, or do a frittata or some type of quiche, a breakfast quiche, right? And just get up and heat that up in the morning. Keep it really simple. You don't have to get up for suhoor an hour and a half early to cook. Not gonna happen. Right? So I think it's also important that we're realistic in our expectations, and that we plan accordingly. Okay. I think a sister had her hand raised. Who was it that had their hand raised? I think it went away. Okay. All right. So are there any other questions? Hayan, I'm sorry, Minaz, you're muted.
Oh my gosh, I forget to unmute myself. Yeah, no, I'm glad you answered those questions because we had so many of those questions about quick balanced meal ideas, easy to prepare nutritional meals. And you already pointed it out. We don't want you to wait an hour and a half before sahur and start the preparation. So keeping it simple, and so many links you have shared that I am going to go and check them out, and
Just check them
everybody
out.
else should. And easy meal plan. Yeah. So one question is, do you have any nourishment advice for kids who are starting to fast? Maybe it's the first Ramadan or just second Ramadan, and some places going to be very hot. So what advice do you have for those parents or
Okay,
kids?
so I think, and I'm not an alima or anything like that. Wallahi, I'm not. But I think it's important that number one, we recognize when is it obligatory for kids to start fasting. Like there's a certain age, right? Number one. Number two, we want to make sure that we incentivize. We want to make sure that we make it fun, right? This is Ramadan, right? We get the kids excited. They may not fast, depending on their age, they may not fast the entire day. They may fast half a day, mashallah. They may fast the entire day and you incentivize it and they get a prize, right? But realizing, okay, that there's a point where they need to fast and there's a point where they may not need to fast, but it may be a good training opportunity, right? I think it's also important that you keep them hydrated, right? Their needs are quite different than adults, okay? And that you, again, okay, what you're cooking and eating, they're going to be cooking and eating. So in essence, really providing those nutrition foundations when it comes to fruits and vegetables and lean proteins and things like that, right? Really assessing, whether or not can they really fast a whole day or half a day, like what's safe for them, right? And then really just looking at, what you're cooking and preparing versus, of course, what they're going to eat, what you cook and prepare. So being realistic about your expectations when it comes to that. Popsicles, that's fun. Yay. And involve your kids in what you're cooking, right? Involve your kids. They might want to participate in the kitchen. They might want to have a little fun, right? Find recipes that are kid friendly, right? That are also nutrient dense, and it's going to help them as far as nutrition. Yes, Shelly. Thank you so much for purchasing the book. So the book, the comprehensive guide, is actually 100% of the proceeds actually go to a nonprofit. There's a Barakat food box food pantry that we worked with, and they actually go to help families in need, especially during Ramadan. So that's another opportunity, alhamdulillah, to give. So.
Could you point that out again? Which book is she talking about?
That is the Ramadan Reset book. I'll drop the link again.
Yes. So Shelly just purchased the Ramadan Reset book and she's loving it already. And the proceeds are 100% going, they're being donated to
the Barakat food box. It's
okay.
an organization out of Canada. Amana Fitness is a group out of Canada that I've worked with over the past years. We relaunched the book last year and added some additional resources to it. So this is a pretty cool project. And everybody always has the same questions. So this is like your one-stop shop where you can answer your questions and say, hey, this is, what we can do. Manaz, I think you're muted.
Yeah, we had the kids rush in. So our time is almost over and there's one last question, and this is for Dr. Arif. What are your thoughts on weaning off caffeine? Some people start a few weeks in advance. So because when they're not taking their caffeine during the day, they feel like they have a headache or some sort of issues. So what are your thoughts on that? Or how do you suggest people should go
So,
about it?
so the first thing I'm going to say is guilty as charged. I'm one of the first people to whom that happens. I love my coffee, and I think I will be speaking for a lot of people when I say that uh, life today is so busy that we're just on the go, and I drink coffee a lot, maybe more than I should, but yeah, the caffeine withdrawal is a huge problem, of course, in terms of when it's time for Ramadan, because obviously you're not drinking any coffee. So what I would suggest is, and hopefully Sister YaQutullah would have some input in this as well, that you should start weaning off yourself off slowly, maybe a few weeks ahead of time. If you drink 4 cups a day, slowly wean down to 3 cups, then 2 cups, then a cup. It's at Iftar, you can certainly drink a cup of coffee. It's going to provide you some caffeine, which you probably would need, because your body's craving it at that time. Plus, you want to pray Isha, you have to pray Tarawih, and you certainly need some energy for it. So I think it's okay to drink 1 or 2 cups at that time. But the problem is, if you drink any more than that, then you're going to go back into caffeine withdrawal. So what I would say is, limit your intake to 1 to 2 cups at most. You can probably drink a cup in suhoor, and if you want, you can drink a cup at iftar. If you drink more than that generally, then you should start weaning yourself off a few weeks in advance, so that when you are fasting, it doesn't become a problem for you. Obviously, as Ramadan goes on, eventually you'll get used to fasting, and you'll be able to kick that habit. But if you haven't weaned yourself off, the first few fasts can be a little bit of a problem. So I've been there myself. I know.
That's, oh, go ahead, Manas.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that that's interesting because I love caffeine too, but in the form of chai, right? So if I can get me a good cup of Ahmed chai, it's on, right? But again, like Dr. Arf said, weaning yourself off. So in reading some of the literature, it actually recommended about 300 milligrams of caffeine a day. That's only 1 to 2 cups of coffee, right? So if you're drinking a pot of coffee, try to wean yourself. I know, we don't necessarily have 2 weeks left before Ramadan, but really just looking at what your consumption looks like. We're not saying don't have it at all. We're just saying, hey, you might want to cut this back a little bit. So yeah.
I really appreciate that both of you kept
I'll
it
also say,
real, sharing what everybody,
sorry.
you're just like everybody else, both of you being a nutritionist and a doctor,
Yeah.
that people have the same issues. And of course, I understand the work at the hospital is so hectic and busy, and you need a lot of coffee. So
Yeah.
everybody is like that.
No,
You were saying
I
something,
was
Dr.
saying,
Arf.
if you're used to drinking something when you're working, for example, you're used to have your cup of coffee, but you're trying to wean yourself off, that you can probably just get decaf. Still has a little bit of caffeine, but obviously not as much. Our sister said usually the recommended intake is about 200 to 300 milligrams a day, which is roughly equivalent to a couple of cups of coffee a day, depending on what kind of coffee you're drinking. So if you're just in the habit of working, you gotta have a cup by your side. You could consider just drinking decaf, for example.
And during the day, you're not going to have a cup by your side. How about that? Unless you're working the night shift, right? So you're not really going to have the coffee anyway.
I mean, before the Ramadan.
Yeah. I got you.
If you're gonna have it, it better be empty.
Right. Have it at iftar or suhoor. There's your 2 cups.
I think he's going to start working nights now for Ramadan. Maybe that's what he do. Well, it
Right.
seems like you're too bored. You're bored at work, so you just want a companion. That's why you're having
I actually hate working nights. When I was a little younger, I have done nights, but now I don't like it, but in Ramadan, actually, it actually works out really well because, that's, you can have coffee and, you have to pray tawaf for tarawih and all that. I mean, you're in Ramadan, most people will be up a little later than usual anyway.
That's
you're
true.
praying tarawih, you're praying you're just, reciting the Quran, you're praying nafil. You probably get to sleep a little later at night, and then you wake up a little earlier anyway. So, the nights actually work out pretty well in Ramadan.
All right, so somebody had raised their hand, but it's no more there. If anybody has another question, we have 1 more minute. Our time is up. So if you have another question, you can raise your hand.
We did have another question, sister. Can we hear you?
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
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 Carol, I had put in the chat that I'm battling type 2 diabetes, so I'm not fasting. But I'm gathering this information for others who are fasting, and I'm going to concentrate on feeding.
Okay, alhamdulillah, feeding. Okay, and instead of fasting, alhamdulillah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
May Allah reward you.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Do we want to provide contact information in case people want to reach us, or I mean, you're okay? We're good.
So the recording is going to be available at the Secret Institute website, and you can always send us an email, contact Sister YaQutullah on her Instagram or on the Secret Institute page. Sister YaQutullah, would you share your Instagram with everyone?
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and put it in the chat right quick. Let me go here. All right, it is in the chat. Alrighty. Thank you all for joining us. Inshallah, may we all reach Ramadan and get the blessings and benefit from it. Ameen. May Allah accept.
Ameen.
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 Inshallah.
Thank you all for joining us.
And thank you for sharing all the information. And we'll see you soon in another Flourish to Nourish program. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love.